do have just some new video that we want to show you here of some of the scenes from this plane crash there in Kazakhstan from just a bit ago. Remember that Azerbaijan airliner going down, killing a large majority of people on board, though there were several survivors of this. Well, now Russian air defense systems may have brought down that airliner this week, according to a U.S. official. That U.S. official is none other than National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby. Kirby is citing expert analysis and survivor accounts. Now, Friday's assessments echo those made by outside aviation experts who blamed the crash on Russian air defense systems responding to a Ukrainian attack. Now, these statements raised pressure on Russia, where officials said a drone attack was underway in the region where the Azerbaijan Airlines flight was heading for a landing. They did not address statements blaming air defenses here. So this is the first time we are hearing from the Russian Civil Aviation Authority on this story about what the potential culprit was of this. And so we want to bring into the conversation now one of our steadfast colleagues and friends, national security analyst and expert, and retired Marine intelligence officer, Hal Kempfer. He joins me. And Hal, thanks for being with us here. Let's bring you into the conversation about this. I know you've been wanting to talk about this. This is the first time you and I have, I believe, spoken this week. But there's a lot to get to here. And we have some new video we're going to show in just a moment here. But what is the Russian side saying at this point in time? It seems to me like they're chalking this up to the fact that, hey, a Ukrainian drone attack was happening. We had to respond to it. Oh, and at the same time, this plane was up in the air near it.
Andrew, it's the Russian story gets rather more interesting every time you hear it. There was fog, which there was some fog around Grozny and Chechnya, where the plane was supposed to be landing. The plane's route actually takes it from Baku over, and then it cuts back. And interestingly, the route comes in at about the same path that I would have expected the Ukrainian drones would have come in. So you can see where they're but the Russians claimed it was a bird strike initially. No, it was not a bird strike. There's ample evidence. There's about 29 of the 67 passengers survived. They said there was an explosion. There may have been more than one explosion. There was shrapnel in the airplane. There's been video of the shrapnel in the airplanes. It looks like the Russian air defenses took it under fire. It's not quite clear what hit it, but it was some sort of air defense missiles is apparently what hit it. And that's where that's where it starts to get more interesting. All the indications are the Russians may have realized what they've done. Now, first off, Russia should have shut down the entire airspace. Once they knew that there was a drone attack, they should have shut it down, but they did not. They did not shut it down. Hence, that civilian airliner flew into essentially battle space, if you will. The Russians made that mistake. And then the Russians twice denied it. The pilot kept trying to do an emergency landing at Grozny. The Russians would not allow it, was trying to divert the plane, and then was diverting the plane and said they should do a water landing, a landing at sea in the Caspian Sea. That's extremely hazardous, and there's been a lot of thought that the Russians were deliberately trying to hide the evidence, if you will, by forcing the pilot to land in the water, and even if it meant losing all of the passengers, simply to hide the evidence of the air defense missile damage. Eventually, the pilot flew over to Kazakhstan.
Yeah,
it came very close to making a complete landing. Didn't bring it in, but I have to tell you that the pilot, the co-pilot, the crew, just an amazing job, and frankly, there's a lot of praise for them. The pilot and the co-pilot literally sacrificed their lives to save the passengers that they did, and it was just amazing piloting, getting that flight across the Caspian Sea.
So, Hal, John Kirby told reporters today the U.S. has seen some early indications that would certainly point to the possibility that this jet was brought down by Russian air defense systems, but refused to elaborate when he was pressed on this. He characterized the short answer as yes, but said he'd leave it at that here. What do you think he means by that? Evidence that U.S. officials have seen to suggest this. And if that's the case, and the United States makes that public, will Russia be forced to respond, to at least admit culpability? And if so, will they then, help the investigation further along here? Which one comes first, or do neither of them come at all?
Well, there'll be more evidence coming out. There's a lot of pictures. There's pictures from within the aircraft itself. Welcome to the cell phone age, where passengers were actually taking pictures of the inside of the aircraft, and you can see there's clearly shrapnel. Something exploded, and there's shrapnel holes in the aircraft. There was a rapid depressurization. All of the air mass had dropped. So you can tell from that it was not a bird strike in the engine. All right, and normally heavy fog doesn't cause the air mass to deploy. So neither of those things hold up. But also, it's all the physical evidence on the ground. They have the black boxes. We're looking at that, but also there's been lots of pictures that clearly indicate that it was an air defense missile that exploded. I'm not quite sure which one.
Yeah.
But I can make some guesses, but it was an air defense missile that exploded near the aircraft, perforated the aircraft fuselage, caused a rapid depressurization, may have actually injured one or more of the pilots. So they were flying while injured.
Wow.
Is what it sounds like. Again, there's a lot of forensic evidence, but one thing you're looking at here, even though that's a horrific scene, what you're seeing there is there's a lot of aircraft that they can look at. There's a lot of aircraft debris that they can examine, and they're going to put a picture together of what happened. And part of this is Russia. Look, Russia's relationship with all the South Caucasus nations is not great. Let's just put it that way. With Azerbaijan, for a number of reasons, it's been very tepid. They did they basically pulled out the rug out from under Armenia in its war with Azerbaijan, but at the same time, they have not mended fences with Azerbaijan by a long stretch. And so Russia's in a very difficult situation. I would remind you that Russia has never admitted blame for the downing of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 in 2014, when that was absolutely proven to be a Russian Buck missile system that brought that airliner down. So, when you say, could both of them not be true, I could say, well, there's going to be plenty of evidence to indicate that the Russians actually did shoot it down, and it's very unlikely the Russians will ever admit it.
But Hal, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but one piece of evidence this plane crash has are survivors.
Yes. Absolutely.
What can they add to the investigation, their interviews, their witness testimony, so to speak?
A tremendous amount, and nothing will replace that. Their witness testimony of what they saw, what they experienced, what they went through, and also injuries. You can't say there were a number of people, and it's not entirely clear. A number of people came out looking very, obviously a lot of blood and everything else. But it's very likely that some of the survivors, and of course the victims as well, the ones that didn't survive, will have shrapnel embedded in their bodies, not just in the it'll be in the plane, it'll be in the furniture, the seats and everything else, and in the fuselage. But it's very likely that they may be removing bits and pieces of air defense weaponry, shrapnel, from some of those who survived. And of course, obviously, during the forensic analysis, those who did not survive, that they can get in there and actually do that. You got to remember, it was for part of the plane, it was a pretty catastrophic, incident. But they're going to find that, and that is pretty much irrefutable. Once you have shrapnel removed from the passenger from a passenger who was on a plane in a situation like this, you can't explain that away. There's no way the Russians can explain it away.
Hal, let's talk about a piece in the Wall Street Journal you sent over that has to do with this story. The title of that piece goes as follows: "Missiles are now the biggest killer of airline passengers." The sub-headline on it saying, "Passenger flights are extraordinarily safe, except near conflicts, which are spreading." They cite this group, the Flight Safety Foundation's Aviation Safety Network. It's a global database of accidents and incidents The tally would bring to more than 500 the number of deaths from such attacks during the period that they measure here. I mean, that kind of goes to show you and is evidence nonetheless of the extraordinarily safe civilian flying that we have experienced here in the United States, at least, for more than a decade, more than 15 years. Obviously, the United States is not in a conflict zone, but flights do fly over these conflict zones, and that is what they're citing here. I just thought it was an extraordinary piece of journalism that the majority, or at least that's what they cite, of airline casualties come during conflicts.
It's really stunning, the fact that that's the biggest number now. It does say, and you're absolutely correct. That is a testament to the safety of the commercial airline industry. That something like this would be the biggest cause. I mean, anecdotally, and certainly looking back, one would think there would be accidents, horrible accidents. And there's been some horrific accidents. I look back to the history of aviation. There's been all sorts of things, but part of it is, and this is one of the reasons you and I talk so often, is there's a number of conflicts around the world,
Yeah.
and there's some very dangerous airspace. I can recall multiple times flying into the Horn of Africa, right through airspace that today I don't think the airlines fly through that airspace, because that is flying literally right over the airspace where, well, for example, recently the U.S. shot down one of our own F-18s. All right, and not to mention all the Houthis shooting down various aircraft over the Red Sea, Bab el-Mandeb. So that's there's a lot going on there. The Middle East. Need I say more about what's going on around Israel?
Sure.
All the countries around Israel, and certainly the Persian Gulf issues and things like that. And then, of course, you have everything around Ukraine. Although I would point out that Ukraine, Russia area, I think everyone realized that was very dangerous airspace. That was kind of a wake-up call to the airline industry.
Okay.
When MH17 was shot down, I really think that they were looking. Unfortunately, that's one of those things. They were looking very closely at the shortest route in order to save fuel costs, and not doing a real bigger risk assessment, which is what are some of the other things that can happen. And unfortunately, that's how things change. And so, yeah, it's just a stunning statistic.
Yeah, Hal, stay with us. We want to just take yet another quick commercial break, though. We're staying in this region of Eastern Europe and Eastern Asia, of course, known as the Caucasus region. We're talking about Georgia. We'll be back in 2 minutes.